Well, good morning and welcome to a Sunday morning here on the compound. It's the Sunday, it's the 21st of September. I've just come down here by myself. Well, Luna has followed me. I left the other three up in the house, in the room. We can't unfortunately put them out the front because outside the front it's sacred ground at the moment for here comes Richie, so it becomes very difficult. Yeah, my reason, sorry, Richie came down with her brother to get some wood for cooking. Yeah, I just wanted to get away with some peace. These type of events become quite intense with family and friends coming and hanging around and talking, and and it's okay for a while, but it goes on and on for days and days and days, and by the time you've finished a wake, it can be quite exhausting. As I explained to Richie, and she's been to two funerals. She's been to my mother's funeral, and she's been to one of my nephews who passed away very suddenly as a baby. So she was at that funeral as well. I'm trying to think if she's been to any more. She's been to at least two funerals in the UK, family funerals. But yeah, in the UK, we don't exhibit the body for days on end in our homes, and where people say come and pay their last respects or goodbyes to a body. We don't do that. In fact, bodies are very much kept away from people's eyes to a large degree. They're not usually exposed to people, family, or even, unless you want to review the body before it gets put in the casket. Family member I'm talking about can do that if they wish, but it's not forced upon you, shall we say. Whereas here it is very much so. So you have this to deal with over the days as well, which I'm brought up a different way, so it's very difficult for me to see it. I know in Rome do what the Romans do, as Richie would say, and yes, I respect the way it's done here for people in this part of the world. That's how they handle a wake, and that's how they handle a funeral, and that's how they used to do it in the days of old in the UK, actually, and it was done the same way. But we've moved on. We don't do it that way anymore, and we also get over the process. We celebrate the life and then move on quite quickly, so we don't end up taking days and days and sometimes weeks in just the process. So sometimes the body can be laying in the front room of your house for a couple of weeks. And other things, you have to have all your gates open. The gates have all got to be open. And that's why the dogs are locked inside the house. Because they can't put them out because they're just, well, obviously I would be concerned. I don't want the dogs to get knocked down by a car, but I'm more concerned that they cause an accident on the road. Someone comes along on a motorbike, a teenager, and Rufus runs out in front of it. And Rufus gets hit by the motorbike, and then the teenager comes off, and they don't wear helmets here, as you know. He goes head on with a concrete post in the road, and I would worry about who's the liability. Well, apart from everything else, what happens in a case like that? So, as you can imagine, if a dog causes an accident on a road in in the in the UK, if it's loose on the road and it's your dog under your license and you've allowed it to get out onto the road and it causes a serious accident, you're liable totally as the dog owner. Serious case of manslaughter. I'm not sure how often that happens, but these days you don't see dogs running around loose on the roads, fortunately, so it's not happening. Here, of course, you have dogs on the road all the time, and accidents happen all the time as well. So I've got to be, I'm stressed out in areas that I shouldn't really have to be, but I am, because I've got to concern myself with 3 dogs. It's like and why should I be? It's not about the dogs really. It's more about the damage it can cause in other areas that can concern you because of the gates having to be wide open. Not just unlocked, but wide open. That's the custom. So anybody can walk in and pay respects. Basically, that's how it works. So one has to respect those customs. Yeah, but the things I stress, it's like gathering fruit from the trees using these long bamboo poles with a knife on the end and a basket. The trouble is, up in those trees, we've got lots of power lines, power cables. Power runs through these cables to connect to every house. It hasn't happened here, thank God, but the amount of people that lose their life due to being electrocuted by messing with a power line. It happens all the time, actually. You wonder why people still do it. They don't take into account they're looking at the rambutan or the fruit they want to pick. They don't realize they're dicing with death with a wrong move of the knife. It can be over very quickly. But yes, this is the Philippines. This is what the Philippines is all about, and especially in these rural surroundings. So you sometimes have to take a deep breath and just be aware. Rishi says, while in Rome, do as the Romans do, as is the famous saying. Of course it is, and I always, I understand that statement. While in Rome, do as the Romans do, which comes from bishops in Milan who were in Rome, I think, at the time, and they noticed they weren't doing mass on a Saturday or fasting. I can't remember what the process was. It was something that they would, and that was why they respect the customs of a particular area, which is important. Respecting the customs, and very importantly too. I always used to get confused with that statement. When in Rome, do what the Romans do. I always used to think, hang on, the Romans used to throw the Christians to the lions. Why would I want to do that? But of course it doesn't. It's got nothing to do. That statement has got nothing to do with the far long time ago, the Roman Empire, and it's what it did, how it persecuted the Christians. But it's more to do with the customs of one region to another region, and while in that different region, respect those particular customs. And I agree with that. I do agree with that. Within reason, of course. Respecting them doesn't necessarily mean, in my view, you have to take part in them. I respect I lived in the Middle East for a long time, and I respect the customs of living in the Middle East. Surrounded by Muslim people. But I didn't become a Muslim to live there. But I still respected the faith of them. I still made sure I didn't, during Ramadan, for example, I made sure I didn't eat in or drink anything in a public place, so I respected the faith of how they would look at me in that scenario. Yes, so that's how I was. I mean, that's how you, while in Rome, do as the Romans do. Yes, you respect each other's culture while there. Today there's an important vote in Parliament, or not vote, that's already been decided from what I understand. The British government are going to recognise a Palestinian state, which is the same as France, which is not what the United States are backing or talking about. And some people are arguing, is that a good thing to do? Should one be looking at doing that? Conflicting with USA's position at the moment on Palestine, or recognising a Palestinian state. Should we be even getting involved in it? Yeah, now let me be clear on this. The Israel stroke Palestinian issue has got nothing to do with Hamas, really, and the atrocities that Hamas have committed on some Israelis, any more than the Israelis putting atrocity methods into Gaza or anywhere else, and where lots of innocent children, women, non-soldiers, non-fighters, if you like, get involved. So both are wrong. Let's be clear. When it comes to killing innocent people, both are wrong. I don't in any way support either when it comes to innocent people being killed. British involvement in this is, whether we like it or not, we are part of this process. We're part of the world. We're part of the human race, and we are the where this process started. Just a quick history lesson, very summarised, of course. I won't go into detail, but look, the Balfour Act of 1917, when the Balfour being the Prime Minister of the UK at the time, and it was then decided, or Balfour Agreement, I can't remember what it was called. But anyway, through many Jewish influencers at the time in UK, in London, who were always being persecuted, and Jews were being persecuted everywhere, across Europe, across all parts of the world, in fact. And some prominent Jewish leaders in UK, in London, have made a point that there should be a Jewish state, and it should be in the Middle East. It should be in Palestine, where Judaism started, where the history of Judaism and Jews goes back a long time, as per the Bible and as per the readings of the situation, and therefore there is a place for Jews in that part of the world. And it was agreed by that at that point in time that there should be a Jewish state in that region, providing it didn't interfere with other states, and it could reach an agreement on all counts with others to get to that position. And that's how it was. So it wasn't a question of go there and create a war and create space for yourself by taking someone else's land. No. The agreement was one would have to process and negotiate and create land for the Jews in that part of the world. Anyway, it was during the First World War that was going on. Anyway, it ended. Things were sort of progressing slowly, as they do with politicians. Jews were still getting persecuted. And then came along the Second World War, of course. And in the Second World War, we also had the Holocaust. where the Nazis were basically trying to eliminate the Jews. It was a genocide that was taking place. There was Jewish people being killed in their millions, families, women, children, and it was horrific, as we all know. We also must remember the Second World War also was a war in which Nazi Germany, for many of those first few years, were on the front foot and were stronger, and they took many countries in Europe. They formed alliances with Italy. They were forming alliances with Mexico and other places as well, or trying to, and Japan, obviously. But they had they were slowly eradicating Europe for themselves, and were at the same time exterminating Jews in millions. And it was tough for the UK. The UK were on the bones of their arse by the time they were defending their country, our country, where the Battle of Britain took place. And the Battle of Britain sort of brought a kind of a breathing time for the war for a little while. While it was rethought. At this point in time, America still hadn't joined the war. They were still looking at it from a distance. Japan had not then invaded the situation. Anyway, the war came to an end, and soon after the war, and at that point in time, Palestine and that whole region was under direct British control, or governance, shall we call it, to some extent. But Britain was already then totally and utterly broke. The war cost them dearly because of the efforts they had to apply to defeat Nazi Germany. And yes, it took American support in the end to help in that process as well, along with the resistance from other countries in Europe, particularly the French. But it was a tough time, and it cost the British economy dearly. I mean, there were even housewives at the time were even throwing their saucepans, donating them to the Ministry of Defence to melt it down to make Spitfires. I mean, that's literally what was going. The war had bust the UK economy totally, bust it. It was finished. So getting back to 1948, when all the unsettled Jewish people that had survived Nazi Germany and the Holocaust, they had nowhere to go, and they had to find their location. So they decided, it was time to move into the Holy Land, as it were, and to meet their destinies in that part of the world, which is what happened. And so they started streaming in. They started arriving in all formats, in boats, in small boats, across the Mediterranean, various ways. And the British were there, and the British had no way of preventing this from happening at all. They couldn't stop this. They hadn't got the resources to do it either, to be honest. And they had to hand the whole process over to the United Nations, which they did. And it became then a program for the United Nations, and Israel was formed in that period of time, to the dismay of some Palestinian peoples, because it was their land in particular. It wasn't Lebanese land or Syrian land, or it was land which Palestine people had their rights to at the time. However, there was some practical thinking about this that was kind of taking it down the road of correctness and everything else. What has happened over the years? Now let's understand Israel first of all. I mean, we talk about the West Bank, for example. That's not Israel. We talk about Gaza. That's not Israel. This is Palestinian land, and you have Israel that facilitates in the middle with Israel. Now, in Israel itself, Israel's 8 million people, of which in Israel there are also 2 million Palestinians living there as well. Not living, I'm talking 2 million Palestinians who live in Israel. Now they're Israeli. They have Israeli passports in Israel. So they are where I tend to listen to in terms of the Israeli issue, because I like to hear their thoughts and stories on it. Now, when Israel's got a more central government or leftish government, they're all okay, they're all happy. But when they've got a very right-wing government, they're very unhappy. They become second-class citizens overnight. I can say it's, in places like Tel Aviv, in the good times of living in Israel, the Israelis and Palestinians get on well with each other. You know, they go to restaurants, they go to coffee shops, they go out with each other, and it's all fine. Other times they don't. There's Luna coming in to talk to me. The current Israeli government is very right-wing and very protectionist, and only focusing on the atrocities of what happened in this recent war in Gaza, or the starting point of the infiltration by the terrorists that came across and started killing Israelis, murdering Israelis, and the atrocities. And Trump keeps on reminding people about that. You know, he saw the tapes, as he says, he saw the videos, and he saw the atrocities. And so he's sort of saying, yeah, that's why Israel has the right to do what it does and to be what it is, and take very hardline call on innocent women and people as well. Now, I totally don't agree with Trump on that. You know, he's not actually saying it like that. He's careful how he says it, of course he is. But that's what he's saying. Of course, the conflict didn't start back in February last year, when it happened, when these atrocities, 2 years ago, isn't it now? Yes, when this whole thing kicked off. It goes back decades and decades and decades. That's when the conflict started. That's when things were what they were, and it goes back to that understanding. Now, another problem in this whole process with Israel is how the Middle East is divided from a Muslim point of view. You have Shiite Muslims and you've got Sunni Muslims. Now, a country that is changed radically anti-West, anti-American over many, many years, going back to the late 70s, early 80s, is Iran, when the Shah was ousted by Ayatollah Khomeini, and it turned totally anti-Western in all aspects of life, and sees Israel as a product of the West. Balfour Agreement and everything else, of course. And therefore, it doesn't, it's it's not an Islam state, it's a Jewish state, and that's the problem. That's the problem. Iran tries to voice itself with its Muslim brothers on the other side of the Gulf, who are mainly Sunni, to say, look, this shouldn't be happening, and therefore backs the organizations that are very much in many countries, Lebanon, many parts of Iraq, other countries with various Yemen, to try and make their point and become an influencer for Muslims overall in the region. Okay, so you've got Sunni and you've got Shiite, who have their slight differences when it comes to their position. So the Shiite Muslims are very much more anti the Jewish element, or Israeli element, let's call it. That's why it's a difficult problem to solve. There have been movements with good facilitating with countries, Sunni countries like Saudi Arabia, etc., to form a relationship with Israel that can work in all aspects, with trading, with traveling, with many different methods of coming closer and supporting each other. But unfortunately, with the current situation now that's taken place in Gaza, the situation has got out of control, and you see, two wrongs don't make a right. And as much as I totally appalled by the way Hamas dealt that blow with Israelis, I'm appalled by it. I'm also appalled by the fact that the Israelis take large, big weapons and destroy and kill innocent people in Gaza. And although I know they have every right to defend themselves and their homes, don't get me wrong, and I know they will say things like, human shields are put in front of the people we're trying to get hold of. I understand all that stuff as well. But if they want to win a war, you've got to win the public opinion as well. You've got to win public support. You've got to have good right on your side and good on your side. And Israel at the moment they could have they are taking it too far with how they're dealing with the blows back at Hamas, with far too many innocent people being killed in the process. And what does that do? It creates more enemies for Israel. So I can understand that process. Now, I support Israel. I believe Israel should have a independence and have its own state in Israel. But I also support Palestine. I think Palestine also deserves its own state. So that hasn't changed. And that's what Britain, sorry, a long story this has been, but that's what Britain are voting for, or established, which America aren't. America are very much on the side of Israel. Britain is on both sides when it comes to Palestine and Israel, of having their independence and freedom and peace. And they're not getting confused with Hamas, a terrorist organization that were in government in Gaza. Hamas were ruling, a terrorist organization that you could arguably say I don't know if it was democratic or not, but they they gained the leadership to run Palestine, Gaza. We know it's not an easy solution. I've got a friend, a student in Israel, Palestinian, and I asked him, how is this going to end? And he says it's never going to end. Never going to end, because of the deep divides, let's call it. The deep divides. One blow, one blow, one blow, just ongoing. But I'd like to think that humanity can win win this one day with the right leadership in both sides. At the moment, the leadership is wrong. Hamas leading Palestine is wrong, and a right-wing government leading Israel is wrong, in my view. Both, you're never going to get an agreement with that type of infrastructure, are you? That's the point. No, I do think, I am optimistic, I'm positive. I'm not pessimistic, I'm optimistic, I'm positive. That despite this, let's call it, this situation that is between Israel and Palestine, with a little help, or probably a lot of help, from Iran on one side and the USA on the other. And you can't forget the UK in this process. But with all that, I still like to see humanity coming through in the end, and I believe wholeheartedly that resolve can come with everlasting peace in that part of the world. So I live in hope. I'm not living there, of course. People who live there have obviously got very different views than I have. Some, not all, some. I know Donald Trump, the US president, likes to see himself, or wants to be, this great peacemaker who's going to prevent wars and stop wars that are currently running, and prevent them as far as the future goes. Now, yes, he says all this, and I think it's fantastic if he does achieve that. But he's applying aggressive methods to in terms of sanctions, and in terms of other things. At the same time, he's talking about being the peacemaker for the world, and bringing wars to an end, etc. Well, it's not going well in Ukraine, Russia, is it really? So, I don't want to get into another discussion. But as far as Palestine and Israel go, having spent many years living in the Middle East, in the Muslim part of the world, and having visited Tel Aviv on 2 occasions as well, I think people there can find a way, providing the works of an evil Iran, because Iran, and I don't believe all the people in Iran are evil either, but I just think the administration who manage Iran, who run Iran, the mullahs, they are the cause of this hatred in the country. This is the real problem. And my wife is coming down to serve lunch to me, or not serve lunch, to tell me about lunch. So this is what I think is the problem. No, not lunch. Lunch is not a problem. Hello, sweetie. I'll just film you. You're coming down to tell me about something, no doubt.
No. Lunch. I'm still waiting to
It's okay. I'll wait.
cook the eggplant.
I'm still, yeah. People are sort of treating me like I'm an important guest. That's why I've come down here.
But you're an important person.
No, I'm no more important than anybody else. I'm just a foreigner.
A bloody foreigner.
That speaks a different language. That's what I
A
am.
bloody foreigner.
I think the wisdom of the people make the difference. You know, I think and that's how people feel and see things. At the moment, the world is very disjointed. It's very divided. People feel they're losing out on things. They're feeling poor or poorer. And some have never had anything anyway. They've always been poor. And lots and lots of dissatisfied people in the world living at the moment, and divided. And it's like politics is dividing people. Politics has got to bring people together for it to be successful, for it to be working. Politicians have got to be able to bring people together in their own country and then bring countries together on top of that as well. That's what they've got to do. At the moment, we're a long way away from that. So the world is heading, but it's the right-wing movements that are going across the world, Europe as well at the moment. They're not the answer. There might be a short-term solution for defending oneself in a war, but they're not the answer. They're not the long-term answer. So with more and more right-wing thinking, we're going to have more and more conflict. There's no doubt about that. In some areas, right-wing authority is probably the only way at the moment to maintain one's freedom. In other areas, it's just over-barking, in my opinion. Anyway, let me get back to my remembering Tatai with everybody. Talk again.